Every morning, my son, daughter, and we sit on the porch waiting for my son's bus. And in doing so, we connect with that morning and with our neighborhood, and we notice different things. We notice maybe a new stand of mushrooms, the leaves changing color. We're noticing the snails and where they like to hang out in the hydrangeas. We're listening to birds and frogs. And that's where I am right now. That's where Drawn to Place is now in my life and me sharing it with my kids, but that's not always where it was. Hi, I'm Sean, a former architect, an educator, an artist, and I want to start this Drawn to Place podcast with kind of its origin story. So I'm so glad that you are here. I'm so glad that you found me. This is the very first episode. It's kind of an origin story of Drawn to Place, where it came from, and where it's going with this community that we're building. If you haven't already, subscribe on YouTube, on TikTok. I have a newsletter on Substack, and on Instagram. All of it is Drawn to Place, so it's easy to find. So Drawn to Place started because I noticed for the first half of my life, it was easy for me to connect with wherever it was I lived. I grew up in Granger in the Lower Yakima Valley. Then I went to Pullman. Then I lived down in Truckee on the North Shore of Lake Tahoe. And all of those areas, it was really easy for me to connect. I didn't really even think about it, but I feel very drawn to those places. Like when I think about it now, I feel this connection to those places. And that's where that name kind of comes from, is you feel drawn to a place and drawn to place. It's not that you have to be an artist to be here. So if you're not an artist and you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know how to draw and I don't want to draw, perfectly fine. It's a play on words, really. I connect with the world through drawing, some writings, but especially through drawing, I connect with places. But you don't have to do that. So do stick around still, even if you're not an artist. But I was very connected to those places. And then I moved to where I am now, which is in Western Washington. And I've never really felt a connection here. I've lived here the longest, the most of my life I've lived in Western Washington. And I don't feel super connected to it. It's getting better. And it's getting better because of my purposeful engagement of choosing to notice and connect with where I am right now, the way that it naturally used to happen with all the other places I lived. So because of my connection down in Truckee, when I got the opportunity to do my MFA in Incline Village, I jumped at the chance to be able to go down there. It felt like I was going home, even though I only lived in Truckee for a little over a year. But that connection was so strong. And so I went down there to do my MFA, which I eventually did receive from the University of Nevada, Reno, in visual art and interdisciplinary art. But that connection down there, I felt it when I would go back. And I had to figure out what to do my thesis on. And that's what I've always kind of come back to, is how do people connect to place? What does it mean to be of a place or from a place? And that draw that you feel to other places, whether you've just vacationed there or whether you've lived there for a few years or many, many years. What is that? So I started to explore that. That's what I explored in my thesis. And that's where the origin story of Drawn to Place really occurs, is I didn't feel connected to where I live right now. And so how can I do that through art and through my thesis? And that's this is a continuation of that idea and of my thesis, and really is becoming my body of work as an artist. But that's where that starts. So it's this idea that we can create a community of people that are slowing down and that are noticing and that are purposefully engaged in where they are, so they feel a deeper connection to where they are, which then leads to a multitude of wonderful things. You have more empathy for people, you're connecting with your neighbors, more empathy for the world, only good can come from it, is the way that I see this community. And that's my hope and my vision for Drawn to Places. It becomes this very large community of people that are connecting with each other and with places around the world and sharing those in whatever way they choose to share that. So it's a practice that will not only help you in your day-to-day life and where you live right now, it's really a practice that will help you with everything. Because with my background in architecture, having a graduate degree in architecture, part of architecture for me was learning how to see things differently and learning how to notice. And then, of course, in my MFA, it's the exact same way, learning to see the world in a completely different way. Here's how the world normally sees this, but what if I look at it this way, right? So all that comes from noticing. And as a child growing up in the country, and I was always running off with my dog and doing all sorts of stuff, somewhere along the lines, I learned how to really, really notice nuances of things, whether it was out of necessity or it was just the way my brain works. I've always had this knack for noticing things and then very quickly seeing them from a different way. My wife hears all the time. I'll open a package of something and I'll get it out. It could be a toy, it could be something you use in the kitchen or whatever. And I'll start looking at it and thinking about how it's going to be used. And she will inevitably hear these words in some form. Well, that's idiotic. Or why'd they do that? Or I'm going to change that. Because I alter pretty much everything that I have to make it work better. Because I just think it could work better. But that's also part of, but every now and then she does hear, then this is a really good product. I really like this. And she's like, I rarely hear that. That's a rarity for you. But it all comes from the noticing. So what I'm getting at with this little side bit is that your noticing is going to affect your entire life. So whether you are in design, whether you are a nurse, whether you're an accountant, whether you are alignment, it doesn't really matter. When you start to notice things, you get into the habit of noticing things, that carries on into other things, and you'll notice little nuances of things. You'll start saving time. You'll start maybe thinking about redesigning things because they aren't working as great. Okay, these are all things that we're going to get into with this podcast. But just know that this isn't just about engaging with your personal life and how that affects your personal life with where you live. It goes in ripples beyond that. This is just a rock thrown into a very large pond, and we're creating these ripples of this community that go out throughout your entire life, and we'll talk about that. So the way this story, that's the origin story. That's kind of where Drawn to Place comes from, is me doing my thesis and thinking about how can I engage more, because in that purposeful engagement and that connection to here, I'm starting to notice more and more things that only exist here. And I know that when I move away, that there are things that I will miss, and I hopefully will feel this draw to this place again. It doesn't mean I want to live here anymore, but it also is, it won't just be this forgotten 20, 25 years of my life that is like a blank, right? I'll feel like, oh, there were things there that I was engaged with and that I remember and that I really liked about that, and it only happens there. Okay, so it's easy to get caught up in our daily lives, going so busy. We're just going from day to day, from holiday to holiday, month to month, school year, not school year, summer, these big things that happen in life, that it's easy to jump from marker to marker. And we forget that life is being lived between those markers. And if we don't engage within those, then we kind of have these blanks. At least I did. And it's almost like the movie Clicked, where he rushes through life and then he's missing these parts of his life, and he wants to slow down for the good parts, but then it's not letting him. If you've ever seen that with Adam Sandler, Clicked. So that's the origin story of Drawn to Place. That's where it comes from. That's where it's going. That's the community that we're building. And I'm so glad that you are here. So what this podcast is going to be, it's going to be weekly. I just share a story, a thought, a moment, something that I've done, maybe a practice that I've started, practice that you can use to help you notice and help you connect. And they're going to be short. I don't want you to be stuck in this podcast for a long time, because I want you to get done listening to me, take what you've learned from me, hopefully learn something, and out into the world so that you can start noticing and connecting and engaging more. So for today, what I want you to do is, just when you're done here, is take a little breath, think about this origin story. Maybe this will be the origin story of your noticing. Will start today. And look up from your phone and just notice something different that you didn't notice yesterday. It can be the way the light falls on something. It could be a sound. You don't have to record it. You don't have to write it down. You don't have to draw it. None of that. It's Drawn to Place is the art of noticing and purposely engaging. It's not the art of actual drawing and making art form that way, or writing something down and making an art form that way, or recording it on your recording app on your phone. That's not the art. The art and the community itself and where the magic happens is actually in the noticing and in the engagement. Everything beyond that is gravy. Everything beyond that is just you recording it so you can talk about it with somebody else or remember it for yourself. It's not even necessary, right? So that's how the podcasts are going to work. If you do subscribe to Substack, there is a weekly newsletter on there too, just a shorter kind of versions of these podcasts, but I also throw other things in there too that will help you out. And if you want to just get into everything, I really encourage you and would love for you to subscribe. YouTube, Substack, Instagram, or TikTok, or both. That would be great to have you in the community with all of that. So go out and notice. Thank you so much for being here. Please subscribe and share this with somebody who you think needs to hear this today, or that you want it to be part of our community. I'm Sean. This is Drawn to Place podcast. Thanks for being here.